Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Cover Disc Face Off, where the content of the disc is more important than the mag, as we check out April of 1992. This includes Amiga Power, Amiga Format and Amiga Action. Fight! And right into the action, Amiga Action that is, which came with 2 discs, with 3 demos across them. First up is Cyborg, which boasts that it's a 4-level mega psychotic demo, which we can tell from the selection screen. What it doesn't make obvious is which planet you start on. But once you work that out, and get past this slightly information heavy screen, we get to the game itself. Which is this 3D tube racing like thing. You move around the inside of the pipe using left and right, and you can control your speed with up and down, all with you being up against the clock. And it's timed in such a way that while you might think you're going fast enough, you're most likely not. And you'll have to go faster. Much faster. Now I'm very impressed with how smooth and fast the whole thing moves. But I think it might actually be too fast, as trying to work out what you can touch and where you need to go while the whole thing is flying past you is quite hard. It's not a bad concept, but I think it could have done with some refinement. And it might have gotten that between the demo and the final release, but considering how polished this all looks, I have the feeling that this was a near finished game by the time this demo came along. Which is a shame, as it's an interesting game. I'm just worried that this demo might have put people off. Next up is Son of Zeus, a demo for an unreleased game. And this is a bit of an odd one. You first move around this 3D world, where various creatures also roam. It's a nice looking 3D engine, even if it does pause every so often to load in new graphic sets. But I'm not sure why we're walking around this world. But at some point, those creatures that you see will catch up with you, and at that point everything will change to a side-on style brawler game. And this is really where the game falls apart for me, as everything feels so slow and clunky. It's nicely drawn, with a decent number of frames of animation, but that really has come at a cost.
Now you die.
As the whole thing doesn't feel very nice to play. Particularly if all you have is the club, as it has a pretty small range, and trying to get up close and personal with some of those monsters can be quite hard. But if you do manage to get in the odd lucky blow and finally take them down, then at which point you can just walk off the screen to continue. Though for some of them you might want to hang around, if you get my point. I've been told there are other weapons in the game, but it's up to you to try and find them. I think they're just randomly scattered in the world, because there is quite a large area for you to explore. It's also up to you to try and work out how much health you have, as it doesn't seem to show up anywhere. There's these 2 bits at the corners, but I have no idea what they mean. And while you're on the map, you might randomly also get to jump over some rocks, or possibly into trees. And you might also find stuff to pick up, though trying to actually pick it up is a real pain because the controls just want to keep you moving. The magazine used a whole page to talk about the demo, but managed to say very little about it. So you do have to work it all out yourself.
Forgive me, Father. I have failed.
Now I think the demo itself showed promise, but judging by the lack of release, I'm guessing they never ironed out all the issues that I've mentioned. And the final demo for Amiga Action is Space Crusade, which has you taking the Blood Angels on their first mission of the game. And this is one that I've played so many times, as even though I enjoy the game, I feel I rarely get past this mission whenever I play it. So I could have replaced the few copies that I had of this title with this demo, and it would have been about the same. Your team is tasked with heading into the bowels of the ship to take down the Dreadnought. And then of course you've got to get back to the starting point to get back out again. Which is significantly easier said than done. Lots of creatures roam the hallways, and the roll of the dice aren't always in your favour. But then what would you expect from a tabletop game that's been converted? The game switches between this top-down and 3D view when fighting. But you can also switch that at any time that you like, if you want to really see what's going on. And I'm not sure if you can do this in the demo, but in the full release you can actually turn that off completely, so it's always top down, and it's a little bit faster that way. Each member of your team gets 2 action points per turn, so you better use them wisely. And yes, it is a turn-based strategy. So you better be careful, as you never know who or what might show up, or what nasty tricks might be played on you. Just get in there, bash them with your swords, blast them from a distance with your blaster, and try and get out as quickly as possible. And if the end does come to all of your people, then you'll have to restart the Amiga to try again. All in all, it's a great game. Next up is Amiga Power, with a 2-disc special. The first one is full of demos and the other with PD titles. And the first demo is from that titan of great games, Titus, with their self-titled game Titus the Fox. And if I'm being honest with you, I've actually always enjoyed Titus the Fox. It looks nice enough, and while the controls aren't amazing, they do work, as you have to pick up and throw projectiles to take out the various baddies, similar to their earlier platformer, The Blues Brothers, which I think might be the better game. Now this demo might not sell you on this title, because first off, the load times are long, and just when you think they're done, it then has to load the music and sound effects. They've also picked one of the later levels, so the difficulty is kinda ramped up a little bit higher than you might expect. And those spikes that you can see almost immediately, they will kill you if you miss the spring. Which in itself wouldn't have been an issue if it wasn't for the fact you have a single life. Lose that, and you're right back to the main menu again. So if you want to play again, you're going to have to sit through that loading screen all over again. Which is a shame, as I've said, I do enjoy this game, and the earlier levels were really fun, big, open, and quite good to play. But for the demo, it's just poor design all around. Which to most people could be a byline for Titus games overall. The second demo is Project X, a side-scrolling shooter by Team 17. And this is a bit of a classic. And I probably don't need to go over this in too much detail, but let's check out the demo anyway. There is a whole range of weapon upgrades and lots of things for you to shoot on the screen. All in this nicely drawn world as well. The Amiga got some great shooters, and this is definitely one of them. But you do have to be careful where you're moving around, as you can't touch anything in the level. even if something looks like it's part of the background, it's most likely not, and it will take you out. But at least it'll look cool when it happens. The demo seems to be a variation on the second level, with some of the enemy placements being changed. And I think some of the layout might be a bit different as well, but I'm no expert on Project X. Shooters really aren't my thing. But it is great fun to start off with a whole bunch of weapons already unlocked. And if you're good enough, you can further upgrade them as well. All in all, this is a great demo, and I'm sure it would have sold a lot of people on the game. The second disc is a PD collection, and you know how much we enjoy PD games around here. But unfortunately, we've covered two of them in a previous episode. Those being Missile Command and Go Moku. And as they have been covered in detail, I'll just briefly go over them now. But if you want to know more about them, then I'll link a video in the description. Missile Command is a clone of the arcade game with the same name, and one that does a very good job of recreating that title. It looks decent and it plays very well, with lots of the smaller touches from the arcade game being present, like the cruise missiles. All in all, I said it back then and I'll say it again, it's a great little game. Go Moku, from what I've been able to tell, is an original-ish title. You play on a Go board, but the goal is a little different, as you have to try and line up your stones to have 5 in a row. This can be in any orientation, and the AI is very good at it. It's a fun game when I played it a few months ago, and it is still fun now, but I've not got any better in that time. So if you want a little bit of a challenge, check it out. The first new PD game is Downhill Challenge. This is a take on that downhill skiing genre, like Horace Goes Skiing or Ski Free. The objective is simple, make it to the bottom of the slope. Doing that though is, yes, obviously much harder. You have to avoid trees, branches, rocks, and smaller trees, all of which will come at you in random layouts every single time you play. So you really have to be on your toes, or in this instance, on your skis to avoid them, either by weaving around them or trying to jump over the small obstacles. But be careful, as the hit detection isn't quite as forgiving as you might have hoped. There's also these red flags, which you can collect by ramming into them. They will provide you with extra points, but only if you manage to make it to the finishing line. Which took me quite a few attempts to get to. Thankfully, it's not a single mistake and you're out type of affair, as you do have a limited number of lives, or trips as they call it. Overall, it is a fun little title, and you should check it out.
Yay! Yay!
The last game is Rome, and this was made by The Hidden. That's right, this is from the team behind Donk, aka Dong, the Samurai Duck. And I guess they needed something to do while waiting on another publisher to go bankrupt trying to publish that game. And this is a puzzle title, and one that I'm not sure has much to do with its name, as you have to get the ball from the top left to the bottom right of the screen, which is done by switching the tiles around the board. Selecting a place on the board will swap it with the one you're currently holding, and you repeat this to try and lay down a track to the endpoint, based on the tiles that you have to work with on the screen. And while this is all going on, a skull will randomly show up and light up some tiles. If you happen to be in those tiles at that point, then something will happen to you. I'm not sure of all the outcomes, but I did get stuck for a few seconds because of one of them. Which is pretty bad, by the way, as you are timed. And if the timer runs out, then the ball will just head off and usually get destroyed. Otherwise, if you manage to make the track to the endpoint, hit the return key and it will then just make its way to the exit. It's awesome that Amiga Power hired them to make this game, as it is a lot of fun, and it's got a very nice level of presentation, with having music and even a game over screen, even if I do wish I could skip it to get back into having another go. And finally we come on to Amiga Format, and in true format style we have a full program and a few demos. The program is Vista, not an early version of an operating system, but a landscape rendering system. The idea is you can load in these maps that you've drawn in another application, with the colours mapping to grasslands, mountains, as well as the general landscape, and then you can use some limited tools to try and change it, like flow rivers or add lakes. Once you're happy with it, you can then get it to render out your view, and depending on your Amiga spec and the quality of the image, this could easily take an hour to do so. But I do think the results are quite nice. I've always enjoyed messing around with these sort of programs, even later on with PC Format, as they gave away stuff like Bryce. It's one of those things that is fun to mess around with, but it is a bit too limited to really do much with. But I'm sure most Amiga Format owners would have messed around with it for a little bit, but then it wouldn't have been used all that much afterwards. The other disc has quite the range of bits and pieces on it, like this animated sequence on how to finish off some of the levels on Holiday Lemmings. Or there's an Etch-a-Sketch clone called Retch-a-Sketch, which sounds like I should be trying to throw up all over it rather than trying to draw. It's joystick controlled, so you can't really get those lovely curved lines of the original, but I do like how the knobs turn as you move the joystick. And hitting the fire button shakes the whole screen, which is a really nice touch, and doesn't clear it immediately. And continuing on with some PD games, we have Mouthman, which I'm sure you'll be completely and utterly surprised to find out that this is a Pac-Man clone. And it looks decent enough, even if it feels a little bit slow. I'm also not sure the Ghost AI is completely correct, but it is rare for these clones to get that just right. But the rest of this level seems pretty decent. By the time we get to the second one, we find we get a new layout and the speed feels so much better. They should have just kept it like this from the start. From what I've read, there's 4 different layouts, which is quite cool, so it does have some nice variations for you to be messing around with. And I also spotted that it has something quite interesting on the main menu, which is a maze editor. But it doesn't seem to want to start. And checking out that readme again, it turns out I have to finish the game for it to tell me how to unlock it. And seeing I've not got the time for that, well, I guess this is it. Duel is next, but being a competitive 2-player game, I'm not really going to show this off to its best, as this looks and feels like a one-on-one Battlezone game. Just wish it had the frame rate of Battlezone though, because this really does chug. The controls are relatively simple. Forward and back changes your speed, and left and right changes how much rotation you have applied. So you can let go of the joystick and the tank will continue to move around on its own. And then you've got the fire button for firing. The tanks do take quite a pounding, so it's not going to be a relatively quick game to play. But I can see this being a lot of fun with a friend, if you possibly play this on an Amiga 1200. The final PD game on the disc is Biplane, another 2-player game, but this one does at least have some AI. And even on the so-so setting, it will kick your ass. The goal is to try and take off, which is harder than you might expect, and then stay in the air, also harder than you might expect. as you can very easily stall it if you're not going fast enough or you happen to move at the wrong angle. All while the AI will fly around more or less perfectly and take you out at any opportunity. Sometimes before you even manage to get off the ground. This is definitely another one of those games that would be better against a real person. But I do enjoy the fact that they included some AI opponent for you to fly against, even if it doesn't always give you a chance. And the only commercial demo is Myth: History in the Making, a game that I've never really gotten on with. And looking at some of the review scores, it seems I wasn't the only one. From what I've heard, the 8-bit port was much better received. What we have is a hack and slash style game, with monsters constantly spawning in. You fight by holding down a fire button and then hitting a direction, which is almost starting to feel natural after all those games in the Street Fighter 2 video. You do have various weapons for you to find and use, which can help out a lot. And there's also a small puzzle for you to solve if you want to try and take on the boss of the level. But overall, it's a simple enough game, and I'm not sure if it's due to being a demo or not, but some of those graphics do look a little bit off to me. I think the demo is representative of the game. Whether or not that's a good or a bad thing, I think is very much personal opinion. And with that, we're at the end of this episode, with another tough one to sum up. And I think in last place, it has to be Amiga Format. Vista was fun if a bit limited, but Myth was a bit meh. But the PD games were a lot of fun. Second is going to be Amiga Action. Space Crusade was the best demo of the episode, but the other two games weren't quite as good. So in first place is Amiga Power. It had two relatively fun demos, but the great PD selection with that exclusive ROM really put this ahead. And if you disagree with the rankings, or if you spotted something you'd like to see more of, then you can let me know down in the comment section. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was...
Forgive me, Father, I have failed!
And this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching Cover Disc Face Off. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you should be able to find 2 other videos on the screen right now. Or you might even want to subscribe or even ring that bell icon, because that's what I've been told that you need to do. So until next time, thank you and goodbye.